start. So hello everyone who has joined in. You're welcome to have your camera on or off. We just ask that you're muted for the start, and then Anna will let us know when it's time to unmute. I'm Hunter. I'm the Visitor Experience Manager at the Swanner Preserve and Eco Center. I manage our adult education programming and exhibits and everything that happens at the public facing at the Eco Center. And I'm really excited to have Anna and Steve here with me. We host a variety of programs and workshops here at Swanner, and they've all been virtual lately, which will continue into 2021, and then hopefully we'll be able to move to some sort of hybrid program midway through 2021. Our programs are supported by grants, funds, donations. RapTac supports this one the most. And so we're really excited to have all of you here for the mindfulness webinar. And I'm going to pass it off to Steve, who is the home and community. Sorry, you're going to have to correct me on what your title is, Steve. I should have looked at that beforehand.
I'll tell him.
Okay, awesome.
I forget too, so we'll just make it up.
All right,
yes.
Take it away.
Thank you, Hunter.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It's wonderful to have you. We look forward to this event, and it's so wonderful to have Anna with us today. I am Steve Burge. I'm with Utah State University Extension, in Summit County, and we're co-sponsors tonight with Swanner, and we've been looking forward to this. I want to read a little bio on Anna, and then we'll turn it to her as soon as I finish. So Anna Smyth, Managing Director of Mindfulness Utah, is trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction, called MBSR, through University of Massachusetts Medical School, and holds a master's degree in health promotion and education. The content and approach of her trainings are based on more than a decade of research and training in evidence-based methods, including the neuropsychobiology, that's a big word, neuropsychobiology of stress. Her presentations incorporate a variety of cutting-edge adult learning methods. Her training goal is to equip you with both the skills and confidence to apply the information and tools presented, and as a result, discover and contribute deep value to your workplace, community, and life. With that, Anna, we turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve and Hunter. And hello. It's so fun to be with all of you tonight and to see some familiar faces and names, folks that maybe have been in classes previously or that I have come to know. So happy to be with you tonight. Before we jump in, and I'll share my screen with you in just a moment, like Steve said, I am kind of a nerd when it comes to trainings. It's something I'm really, disseminating information effectively is something that I'm really passionate about, if someone can be passionate about something so nerdy. And so tonight, we're going to be doing a handful of different things. You're not just going to be listening to me for 2 hours. How dreadful would that be? And so we're going to do some different activities and exercises, probably about 3 mindfulness practices together of different types, and some opportunities to chat together. We're going to split you up into breakout groups a couple of times for a couple very small little conversation pieces and discussions. So, so that said, you will probably want to make sure that you have either access to audio for those breakout groups, or that you have access to a keyboard that you can type a response on. So, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So let me share my screen with you and we'll jump in. I've got a couple of slides to share, and then we will we'll get to our some of our practices. So Steve already mentioned a couple of things, and one thing that's not in my bio is kind of the element of practice. So mindfulness practice has been a part of my life for a decade and some change. And it really is, if you think about anything else, athletics or music or different things like that, where practice is a huge element, that is definitely the case with mindfulness. That it's something that the more we put our energy and effort and time into practicing, the more benefits we reap. And so we'll kind of get into that a little bit more as we go. And then something that's been a part of my practice is silent meditation retreats, 7 and 10-day silent meditation retreats. And so a lot of that kind of has complemented and deepened my practice in mindfulness and just kind of my understanding of some of these concepts. So what I'd like to do to start us off is to do a little bit of practice. I am a huge fan of transitions as an opportunity to practice mindfulness. And for those of you who maybe are brand new, maybe you've heard the word or seen it on a magazine cover or something, this might be your first dipping your toe into the water, and I promise you it is warm and lovely. And so we're gonna just do a quick practice to just kind of fully arrive. Sometimes when we are going through a transition, our body has transitioned, but maybe our mind is still off in the past, or maybe our mind has wandered off into the future. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes to let ourselves kind of fully drop in and be here and be present for each other and for this time together. So if you want to just take a minute to just settle into a little bit of a comfortable position, something that supports wakefulness but comfort in your body. And maybe bringing yourself to a little bit of stillness. And if you'd like, you can either lower your gaze and just find maybe one point of focus where you can just park your eyes for a few minutes. You don't need to be looking at the screen for this practice. Or if it's comfortable and available to you, you're welcome to close your eyes. And we're just going to turn our attention to our breath for a minute here. So we're not controlling the breath or changing the breath or doing any sort of kind of breathing. We're just being with the breath, just paying attention to these 4 parts of breathing. The inhale all the way through, slight pause at the end. Exhale all the way through, and a slight pause at the end. And as we take just a couple of moments to bring all of our focus and attention to this breath in this moment, maybe also just taking note of the state of the body right now. We're getting towards the end of the day, and it's probably dark outside for most, if not all of us, and that's going to affect us on a biological level. So just noticing, just really checking in with our felt experience of the body right now. And again, without judgment, just what's the state of the body? Maybe tiredness, maybe alertness, maybe hunger or fullness if you've recently had a meal or not. Maybe pain or ease. Or just putting out the welcome mat for whatever you notice here in the body as you breathe in and out. And for the next few breaths, shifting your attention similarly to the mind. And taking a moment to just check in. What is the state of the mind that I have right now? What's the mind that I have to work with? What are the faculties that are available to me? And again, without judgment, we're not looking for any particular state of mind. We're not hoping for or being frustrated with whatever our state of mind is, but just turning toward, noticing, tuning in with some friendliness, some openness. Like we're sitting down with a good friend and just saying, hello, how are you? How are you, mind? How are you, body? And then taking just a few final moments here to breathe in some acceptance, some contentment, perhaps, with whatever we've found, experienced, noticed here in the mind and body. Just for this breath, breathing into a little bit of enoughness and calm. And letting each out breath be a little bit of letting go, letting be. And then in your own time, as you're ready, beginning to bring this practice to a close, preparing for yet another transition out of this practice, maybe raising the gaze or fluttering the eyes open, bringing your attention back to this shared space, so space, as you bring your practice to a close. And if there's anything you need, hydrating or stretching or wiggling or anything else, taking care of that as we bring our attention back to the screen and this space we have together. So there's a book that I love, and any of you who have done any workshops or classes with me previously are probably familiar with this one. This is a book called Comfortable with Uncertainty, and it's written by a mindfulness author and practitioner who I study a lot of her works and her lectures and things. Her name's Pema Chodron, and her books are delightful because they're just these little tiny single page passages. And this one I thought was a great one for us this morning that I wanted to, or this evening, excuse me, that I wanted to share with you. And this one's called Experience Your Life. A woman is running from tigers. She runs and she runs, and the tigers are getting closer and closer. She comes to the edge of a cliff. She sees a vine there, so she climbs down and holds onto it. Then she looks down and sees that there are tigers below her as well. At the same time, she notices a little mouse gnawing away at the vine to which she is clinging. She also sees a beautiful little bunch of strawberries emerging from a nearby clump of grass. She looks up, she looks down, she looks at the mouse. Then she picks a strawberry, pops it in her mouth, and enjoys it thoroughly. Tigers above, tigers below. This is the predicament we're always in. We're born, and sooner or later we die. Each moment is just what it is. Resentment, bitterness, and holding a grudge prevent us from seeing and hearing and tasting and delighting. This might be the only moment of our life. This might be the only strawberry we'll ever eat. We could feel depressed about this, or we could finally just appreciate it. We could delight in the preciousness of every single moment. I love that one, and I think it's particularly sort of poignant and pertinent to tonight's session as we talk about mindfulness in nature. A lot of the work I do and a lot of the sessions that I run are sort of around mindfulness and stress in the workplace or in a healthcare setting or a senior center or things like that, and looking at sort of how can we alleviate stress, how can we work with illnesses, things like that. And I'm really excited about this session because the mindfulness really can play a role in not just getting us to our baseline of wellness and happiness and thriving, but it can also help us to savor every strawberry that we put in our mouth, right? And sort of metaphorically speaking. And when it comes to nature, there's so much to savor. There's so much to savor. And so we're going to dive into that tonight. And I know, all of you probably are already on, bought into this idea that nature is amazing and we should soak it up and savor it as much as possible. And tonight we're going to kind of dive into how mindfulness can help us do that. What are some of the things that might be sort of naturally or habitually preventing us or keeping us from being able to really savor nature and all of its ability to heal and provide clarity and insight and things like that. And this is a really timely time to do this this session, I just yesterday wrapped up the semester. One of my college classes is stress management class, and our final chapter was on ecotherapy. And so kind of the magic and the wonder and the research proven benefits of nature and how they can be really beneficial for our health and wellness. And as we look at, you know, bringing 2020 to a close, it's been a wild ride, hasn't it? It's been a wild ride in so many ways. And so I think this is a wonderful time for us to be kind of looking to reconnecting with nature, with each other, with all sorts of things, right? This opportunity for reconnection. And so tonight we're going to do some practices and have a chance to sort of discuss and do some things to touch into all of that. So what I'd like to do is we're going to do our first of two little breakouts here. And I think what I want to do is we'll do, let's see how many, yeah, let's do maybe 4 to 5 people per breakout. And this will automatically happen. You'll be automatically put into breakouts. So there's nothing that you need to do here. And we're just going to share, this is going to be a little bit of like an introduction. If we were in person, I would have you group up together and chat with each other, but we luckily have that ability to do virtually as well. So you're going to share 2 things. It's kind of one thing, 2 parts of one thing. So we're just going to share a little bit about your love of nature. And so what I'd like you to share is a certain place that you love in nature, and what it is that you love about it. Is it the waterfalls? Is it the wildlife? Is it the bird watching? Is it the smell? Is it that's where I got married? Is it the, you know, whatever, right? So a certain place and what you love about it. So Steve's gonna split us into breakout groups, and you've got about, let's see, you've got about 15 minutes. So you'll have maybe about 3 minutes each to share. If you don't have access to audio, please just, you can type in on your keyboard, and then maybe someone in the group could volunteer to read that out loud. It's really nice to kind of have audio to everyone's sharing. So any questions about that before we split up? All right, Steve, take it away. So thank you so much, everyone. And, you know, I just want to take a minute and acknowledge, you know, as we were talking about in our group, some of the words that came up as people talked about what they love, you know, where they love and what they love about it. Things like peace and quiet and beauty and tech-free. And, you know, when we talk specifically about like breakout groups and talking with people that you don't know or you can't see, maybe none of those words are embodied in that activity. So big thanks to those of you who maybe that was a little bit of a emotional or mental stretch. I've found that especially now that a lot of things have been pushed online, the fact that we aren't just physically with each other, there's a subtle sense of isolation that comes from that. And so little things like taking a minute to just share something through a breakout group, even though there might be some tech stress there or some apprehension, it makes a big difference in bridging that gap of that kind of disconnect that maybe might be there. But on that note, what I'd like to do is ask everybody to just maybe type into the chat box, if you could distill down your story, like I shared a couple words with you, peace, quiet, beauty, tech-free. If there was maybe 1 or 2 words to describe what you shared or the essence of why you love that place, maybe just type those words in, and we'll just let those kind of start rolling in. And then if you have any comments or thoughts or anything else you want to share, the chat box is open. This does not have to be me holding the mic and you all just sitting there quietly. So feel free to chime in if you have thoughts at any time. So I wanted to share let me share my screen again. And then I'm going to share my story with you of my place and what I love about it. So I think all of us are in Utah. And so this might be a familiar scene. I don't think this particular picture was taken in Utah. I think this is an Arizona picture, but it most closely represented from the images I had available, one of my most favorite places in the world. And that is a specific slot canyon in Zion's National Park called Spry. And back when I was younger, sort of in the college days and shortly thereafter, I was really big into canyoneering, loved canyoneering. And Spry Canyon is a backcountry technical canyon where you sort of hike up to the top of the canyon and then you rappel down. I think there's 14 rappels. And at certain times of the year, it's a wet canyon, so you're sort of rappelling down through waterfalls. And it's an incredible experience. Well, I'll give you the very, very shortened version of my experience going through Spry. I was with 3 friends, one of whom had never done canyoneering before, and then the other 3 of us who I would say were maybe intermediate level experience. And we thought, we'll just, we've done this before, we'll just go do this canyon, we'll get up in the morning and do it, and it'll take us, 6 to 8 hours, but it's the summer, we'll definitely be done before sundown. So we brought some snacks, and I think we had maybe 1 headlamp among the 4 of us, and went to look for our drop-in point and got pretty lost. Just couldn't quite figure out what the instructions were telling us to find that specific point with the first anchors. So long story short, we sort of hiked down this trail, looked around for a while, and decided to backtrack, start over again, and make our way back up. And we eventually found it, but by the time we found it, we had been hiking for about 5 hours. And so we had, I think, 3 hours of sunlight left to do our 14 rappels, and then a kind of a scramble back up to where the car was parked. And we thought, we could do this. And so anyway, long story short, a wet rope is slow, and someone who's never done canyoneering before is a little bit slower. And so we actually ended up pretty much spending the night rappelling through that canyon, and we finished at 7 o'clock the next morning. And the reason I tell you this story, and why this is not a miserable story of like, this is one of the worst days of my life kind of things, even though it was very taxing and emotionally and physically draining. I remember this moment, it's probably 3 in the morning-ish. We hadn't eaten anything for a while, and there was a part of me that recognized, like, this is really dangerous. Like, we could actually, if we make a mistake here, which is possible because we're all very, very sleepy, and kind of in a caloric deficit, we could die, or one of us could get seriously injured. But there was this moment about 3 in the morning where we were going down, rappelling down this waterfall, and it was just, everything was slowed down because we were so tired. And I remember looking up as the wind was kind of blowing through this slot canyon, and I was freezing cold, and I looked up and I could see the stars and just this little sort of slit between the canyon walls. And it was absolutely breathtaking because it was pitch black, and so I couldn't actually see the canyon walls, but I could just see completely black and then this little wavy slit of stars, and that image is just burned into my brain. It's one of the most breathtaking and unique things I'll probably ever see. And the reason I tell you this story is because I think that there is an opportunity for us to seek out these places where we can find peace and quiet and some of these other things that you've put into the chat box. But there's also an opportunity to shift our perception, that even when we're in circumstances where we're in danger, or we're frustrated, or we're exhausted, or we're stressed, or all of these other things that I could probably list off for that particular story and experience, but that are very common in life in general, that there's an opportunity for us to just take that breath and look up and be able to witness something that is unique to this moment. It's like that woman, picking the strawberry, right? And that is available to us, not only when we seek it out in these beautiful, breathtaking places, and that's wonderful, but other times and other places as well. So I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes kind of talking about the why of mindfulness. Like I said, some of you might be familiar, some of you maybe this is sort of a new thing. So there's a few why aspects that I wanted to cover. And one is specific to the brain, because I'm a social scientist, and I'm really interested in evidence-based and research-based things that help humans thrive. And mindfulness is definitely one. So you can see, I'm not going to go through these one by one, in this session, but you can see on the left here, there's a lot of research that's showing us the benefits of mindfulness. And if we had the time, I could go through each one of these and tell you why these would be really important and valuable for us in being able to savor each moment and savor our time in nature, right? So a couple I'll just pull out. The increasing mental clarity and focus. Obviously, when we're in nature, there could be a lot of things going on with what we're seeing and what we're feeling, temperature, and if we're doing different types of activities, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a lot going on in our mind, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. But if I'm able to sort of not control my thoughts, but if I'm able to just filter them and let the stuff that doesn't matter just pass through and stay focused on where I want to maintain my focus, I'm really going to be a lot more clear in my ability to tune into these tiny little things, like an amazing palette of color on a leaf that's just fallen from a tree that's green and yellow and red somehow, and that each one is unique, right? Even though I might be walking home because I just got a flat tire, I can still notice those things, right? And then there's other things like regulating emotion, lengthening telomeres. There's a connection between telomeres. If you don't know what those are, they're kind of related to our DNA and aging. So when telomeres shorten, we age. And so that essentially means that, you know, if we practice mindfulness and we're able to lengthen these telomeres, we get more time in nature. So anyway, just a little bit of kind of nerdy research for you there. Another aspect of why of mindfulness is, this illustration here is a little bit simplistic, but typically our experience in life is that we gravitate towards the things that are pleasant and wonderful and comfortable and delicious and safe, and we do everything we can to keep out the stuff that is all of the opposites of those things: scary, dangerous, unpredictable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we typically, you know, by the time we're adults, we've kind of created some pretty fixed categories of what those things are, and a pretty substantial amount of rigidity kind of in our pursuit of one and our aversion to the other. And so when we start to practice mindfulness, that all begins to soften a little bit. And the softening there allows us to, rather than needing to control every moment and then falling apart when we're unable to, because that's kind of the nature of a lot of things. We're all going to age, we're all going to get sick at some point. You know, things will happen to us that we don't want. That we're able to soften a little bit. And again, like I was saying, be present in these moments, and escape this sort of push-pull nature of the mind, and really just kind of open up and maintain our presence in each moment, the pleasant ones, the unpleasant ones, and the neutral ones. And so that starts to shift our experience of stressors, right? And there are like micro stressors, like, oh my gosh, she's putting us in a breakout group, I'm going to have to say something, and then there's these macro stressors like 2020 and everything in it, right? And I'm sure you could list a lot of others. So it shifts our experience so we can feel a little bit more spacious, even if the stressors don't change. It's like my story being in the canyon of like, this is a really dangerous situation, and we've all kind of, you know, we all hate each other right now because we're so exhausted. And yet there can be these just moments of bliss and beauty, and that can happen to us all the time. And there's a real implication there with its impact on our mental and physical health. And the last thing here in terms of why mindfulness, and this may be one of the things that you love about nature. It's certainly one of the things I love about nature is the changing of the seasons. I lived in Guatemala for a few years, and it's near enough to the equator that there really aren't these seasons, these 4 seasons that we get to celebrate here in beautiful Utah. And so the seasons are kind of this representation of change, of just this nature, the nature of change, and that life is constantly changing, things are always changing. And so instead of trying to grasp at security or safety or stability or ground, that we're able to say, I'm going to step out and see that the blossoms are here, and that this is a part of life. Birth and new growth is part of life. And then I can witness sort of the harvest, and then I can witness all of the leaves falling, and then I can witness sort of the death of winter. And I can feel all of that, right? Like instead of resisting and saying, oh, I hate winter and I'm going to shut down and be angry for, 4 months, that we can really kind of touch into our own reception of the changes, right? And there's sadness there, and there's grief, and there's joy, and there's wonder, and there's awe, and there's the full spectrum of emotion that is present and available for us to tap into as we are in nature, right? And then it becomes a lesson for everything else in life, that when we lose loved ones, or when we fall ill, or when loved ones fall ill, or we lose a job, or fill in the blank, right? That we can say, yes, this too, and this is the nature of things. And it's not only me, it's all beings, right? That little owl there, he's in the snow too, right? We're all sort of in this together. And so then it opens us up to this well of compassion and patience, and these skills and abilities that and qualities that can just buoy us up sort of through each day, and then also open us up to this just amazing quality of life and nature. So I want to shift, now that hopefully I've sold you all on on mindfulness with my why. I want to shift gears just for a few minutes and kind of get into the what of mindfulness. And it's starting to be this ubiquitous word. It's in pop culture, and there's mindfulness apps, and there's all sorts of things available now to plug mindfulness into life, which is great. But it is a little bit like, well, what exactly are we talking about here? Is this just breathing, or what's involved here? So it's easy to describe mindfulness by kind of saying first what it's not, and what we typically, our typical state. And that is, you can see this graphic here. And like I was saying at the beginning of our session, our body is always here. Our body's always in this moment. It can't be in the past or the future. It's always right here. Our mind, however, and even possibly in this moment, some of you might be like, oh, well, what am I going to do after the session? Or, oh, I've got this thing I need to, or the laundry needs to be changed. Or maybe your mind is wandering into the past of, oh, this thing that happened yesterday, or that conversation I have, I wish she wouldn't have said that to me, or I need to send this email, or anything else, right? And so the mind most of the time is not here. And that's really sad, because when the mind is not here, we're robbing ourselves of touching into the richness of this moment in all of its shades and colors and shapes, right? And so when we practice, we essentially are cultivating, like I was saying at the beginning, it's like a skill. We're practicing a skill. So downhill skiing, or playing the trombone, or training, or focus, essentially present-centered awareness is the skill that we're practicing and we're training in. And this present-centered awareness is developed in kind of 3 ways, or sort of 3 elements to this practice. The first is we practice on purpose. So lots of times we use the breath as a tool. And so people will say, well, I've been breathing my whole life, so I must be a pro at this. That this is it's an important and key piece of mindfulness practice, that we say, okay, 2 minutes or 2 hours, or while I'm on this hike, I am going to get myself into a mindful state. And I'll talk to you about what that sort of mindful state looks like mechanistically in a minute. The second is in the present moments. There's lots of types of meditation. Some have you visualize yourself on a beach. Some you chant a certain mantra. Some we think of a deity, et cetera, et cetera. With mindfulness, any type of formal mindfulness practice and informal, we are focusing on the present, what's actually here in our reality. And that could be sights, sounds, tastes, smells. And we'll get into that more in a minute. And then the third piece, and you might be thinking, oh my gosh, she is really bad at slides. She didn't make all of her pyramid the same color, but this is on purpose. That is a different color because it is arguably the most challenging aspect of mindfulness practice, but also the real game changer. And that is whatever we notice, thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, whether they're extremely pleasant or extremely unpleasant or totally neutral, that we just watch. We don't say, ooh, I like those ones, let me have more of those, or ooh, those were terrible, I don't want any of that. Or, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad meditator because my mind is wandering. Or, oh, I'm such a good meditator because my mind's not wandering, right? We're just witnessing. We just sit and watch and witness and observe without interacting or getting caught up in any of it. So what does the practice actually look like? The essence of this practice is kind of, there's sort of 3 pieces to it. And And that is, let's see. I'm just noticing that I can't actually see the chat box. So Hunter and Steve, if you see any questions, let me know. So there's 3 aspects to this practice that we do. And I'll kind of focus in on these 3 aspects, and then we'll get more broad and like what are the applications and context, and then we're going to try some out together. So the first thing that we're doing as we sit down, and we did this practice earlier, we sit down and we choose one point of focus. And that one point of focus needs to be in the present moment. And here, there's some suggestions here that are typical applications, like we focus on the breath, which is what we did together at the beginning of our session. Or we can focus on our feet. We can focus on our fingertips. We can focus on, if you're, I'm thinking of being on the ski slopes or something, or cross-country ski, you might focus on the temperature of your nose. Maybe you can sense that your nose is cold. Or anything else, really. We can focus on, lots of times I'll do a mindful eating exercise, and we'll focus on the smell or the taste of whatever the piece of fruit or chocolate or whatever else is. So we choose that point of focus for a set amount of time, 2 minutes, 2 hours, what have you. And then inevitably, for all of us, the mind will wander off. You can see that little dotted line. Do, 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 do. Oh, what should I have for dinner? Oh, what did I find? Oh my gosh, I don't know if it's, right? All the time. And so the second step in mindfulness is noticing. Oh, I'm not focusing on my breath anymore. My mind has wandered. That is actually the second step in a mindfulness practice, and a very important step. And then the third, which goes back to that kind of the top of our pyramid previously, is that we then gently and with friendliness and tenderness and patience, we guide ourselves back to our point of focus, coming back to the breath, coming back to the feeling of my feet on the ground, whatever that point of focus is. And we do that 100 million times if we need to, right? If our mind wanders every single second, we gently, compassionately, with friendliness, bring ourselves back every single time. And what we start to see is that that's actually pretty tricky. When the mind wanders, we say, oh, stupid mind, I can't believe you wandered. I'm so bad at this. And then we say, get back to the breath. No, stay, right? And so we lose our patience. We get very judgmental and harsh towards ourselves. And so in this 3-step process, we're able to really shift. There's a lot of transformation that can happen here. We're able to really shift our relationship to ourselves, right? We soften towards ourselves. We become less rigid. We become less judgmental or controlling or impatient. And we say, this moment is just this moment. And if my mind has wandered or it hasn't, it's just what's here. And so I'm just going to be present with it. And then that starts to translate to our ability to just be present with nature. So some of you, when you got together in your breakout groups, you might have shared a story about a place that you love to go to. I know there were a couple people in ours that talked about destinations like a cabin or somewhere that they like to go visit as a family or with other loved ones. And I'm sure we can all recall those experiences where we crafted this ideal, sort of getaway experience in our mind. And then in actuality, it played out in a very different way. And that was stressful or disappointing or frustrating or what have you. And so again, that's kind of when we see this application that, just like my story before, we were not planning on rappelling through that canyon all night long. But once we were, that's what the moment was presenting us. And so we got to decide what we were going to do with that. And so this practice, right, when we sit down and we say, I'm going to just focus on my breath for 2 minutes or 10 minutes, we're actually creating a skill, and we're changing the makeup of our brain in a way that allows us to be more present in nature in a lot of different ways. And Jody, I'm just scanning through here. I think I see, I still see you. Jody, if you're okay with it, I might have you share your story later towards the end about your hike, because it's amazing. So if you're okay with that, awesome. And anybody, I don't know if you shared it in your breakout group, but it's a great story. So now you're all curious. I'm going to leave you in suspense for a little bit and see if we have time for Jody to share a little bit later. So just really quickly, the last piece I wanted to share with you about what mindfulness is. There are lots of different types of practices. They kind of fall within two categories. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because I really want to get into being able to do some practice together. But sort of these two different categories of formal practice, kind of evidence-based formal practices like sitting meditation, walking meditation, mindful yoga, body scan meditation. These are the practices that we introduce in the MBSR course that Steve was talking about in my intro. But there's so many other ways to incorporate mindfulness. And again, you know, when we're out in nature, there's such possibility and such opportunity to incorporate mindfulness. Again, Zions is one of my favorite places on the planet, and there's a few hikes there that I love to do barefoot, because it is just sort of this this moment by moment complete presence in my surroundings, and my feet go from walking on sand to walking on cement to walking on sandstone to walking on, you know, all these different things. And so it's this reminder of like, oh, here I am, here I am, here I am. And then watching myself, well, I don't like this. I don't like the cement as much. I want to be back in the sand, and watching my mind, you know, have these preferences and things, and then being able to just let go of that, and just handle every moment with sort of gentleness and openness is really the opportunities there. Like, you know, you can see this list: eating, talking, driving, washing dishes, going for hikes, etc. So if you're thinking about incorporating mindfulness moving forward, there's kind of the takeaway here is that there are a lot of different opportunities. If you want to say, I'm going to do a sitting meditation for an hour every day, or I'm going to be mindful as I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, fantastic. Lots of opportunities here. And then just a real quick, this is kind of a nerd out slide, but one that really excites me. This is not a COVID chart. So we're all used to seeing exponential growth on charts now, and it can be a little bit triggering, but this is just a graph from the American Mindfulness Research Association showing the number of peer-reviewed articles published in journals about mindfulness incorporated into different settings with different populations. And so we've gone from, 20 years ago to having not even a dozen to this past year having 1,200. So it's a really exciting time to be thinking about this as something to not only help us to get well, or to get back to our kind of baseline, but also in settings of prevention and thriving and community health and wellness. So it's really exciting stuff. All right, enough talking from me, people. That was too lectury. Let's shift a little bit. So now that you have a sort of a sense of what the underpinnings are, if you will, of mindfulness, I'd like to do another practice with you. And you can sort of watch yourself go through those 3 steps. So if you want to take a minute and just kind of, again, check in with your posture. If you're in a position that feels comfortable, that you can settle into some stillness, and maybe either find, one point of focus to lower the gaze, or close the eyes for a few minutes here. And we're going to bring our attention again to the breath for just a minute. So settling into some stillness here in the body. Letting our attention come to the breath as it goes in and falls out. And if at any time you notice the mind wandering off, just gently, with a smile, bringing it back. And now turning your attention away from the breath and moving it to the bottoms of your feet. So if you are standing or sitting, you might feel the pressure of the bottoms of your feet against the floor, or your shoes, or slippers, or socks, or what have you. If you're lying down, maybe noticing the heel of the foot. with pressure against the floor or couch or bed or wherever you might be lying down. Just taking a few minutes here to tune in with some curiosity to the sensations in the feet. The feet do amazing work for us all day long, every day. And most of us very rarely pay much attention to the feet and the bottoms of the feet. So taking just a minute here with some curiosity, like you're mapping out a new terrain. Just tuning in to whatever you can notice here in the bottoms of the feet. So that might be temperature, maybe noticing warmth or coolness or some of both in different places. Pressure, heaviness or lightness, stillness or movement, blood pulsing, tingling, vibrating, anything at all. We're not looking for anything in particular. We're just seeing. Just like we would look out over a landscape and just examine. Just standing still for this moment, breathing with a fixed gaze here on sensations in the bottoms of the feet. And if at any time you notice the mind has wandered off or has shifted into judgments or labeling or anything else, just again, remembering that gentle return, coming back to the actual felt experience, sensory experience in the bottoms of the feet. And there might be certain parts of the feet, certain sensations that might be more obvious than others. So just taking note of those and then seeing if you can move on. Maybe just doing a little bit of a scan here from the toes to the sole, to the arch, to the heel. And if there are blank areas where you're unable to perceive sensation, just noticing that and then continuing on. Maybe even beginning to observe change. Maybe you previously noticed a certain temperature or a certain heaviness or lightness or stillness, and now it's changed a little bit. And just noticing that. And if you sense yourself looking for a certain special state, you sense any kind of expectation for relaxation or calm or insight, just smiling at the mind and coming back to sensations in the feet. And if the mind wanders off, maybe distracted by other physical sensations or emotions or thoughts, coming back again to the feet. Maybe even bringing a little bit of a sense of humor to this natural phenomenon of the thinking mind. Maybe even some lightheartedness and playfulness as you observe the bottoms of the feet. And now as you're ready, bringing your attention back to the breath for a final few moments as we begin to transition this practice to a close. Just coming to the breath. Tuning in and just letting go into the breath, letting go. With each exhale, as the breath just effortlessly falls out of the body, letting that be an invitation for you to let go into this moment completely. Nothing to do, no effort required. Just allowing yourself to even be held and rocked and cradled by this rhythmic motion of breathing. And as you're ready, beginning to bring your practice to a close, the final couple of breaths, and perhaps introducing some movement into the fingers or toes, fluttering the eyes open or raising the gaze, and bringing your attention back to our shared space together, back to the screen. And taking care of any needs you have, hydrating or wiggling or itching or anything else. Two hours is a long time to sit, and if we were in person, I would congratulate anyone who was standing up and moving around a little bit, stretching and things as we were in this session. And since you're all in your own space, hopefully you are taking the liberty of doing that. I absolutely celebrate that. So the practice that we just did, I wanted to just mention one thing about it, but before I do that, again, I would love to just have folks maybe, if you want to share just something that you noticed or observed as you did that practice, maybe it's something about the actual sensations in your feet, or maybe something about the practice itself, noticing my mind was wandering or noticing anything else, maybe just typing in one or two reflections there. When we practice mindfulness, the integration, so we spend some time just pausing and witnessing and watching and watching and watching and observing from this place of stillness. And then, so when the bell chimes or we wrap up, taking a minute to say, okay, so what did I notice there? What was present? Can be really beneficial. Especially as we practice over time, we start to see patterns. We start to see, oh, I have this certain habit, or I have this certain behavior, or I have this certain thought that I always go to, or this certain emotion that keeps coming up. And so that can be really beneficial. So just taking those few moments after the practice to just kind of say, what was there for me? What did I notice? What did I witness? What did I experience? Can be really powerful, because essentially we're developing this intimate relationship with ourselves, which then allows us to open up our eyes and have that same level of relationship with with nature and everything around us in our environment. So one just little reflection I want to just share with you about that practice we just did. It's a great one for a lot of things, actually. If you are feeling very dysregulated, it's a really good one. It's like a trauma-informed practice. It's a practice that is highly recommended for anyone working with ADHD or autism or other kind of sensory processing disorder. It's also a magnificent one for outside, and maybe Jody, I'm going to give you a couple minutes here if you're up for it to share your story. If you are outside and you are engaging in some activity that you love in nature, or maybe you're outside and you're engaging in some activity that you don't love, or maybe you're inside engaging in some activity, bringing your attention to the bottoms of your feet and just saying, I am going to be in my feet for the next 10 steps or the next 2 minutes. Can be really powerful to kind of quiet the mind and help us to open up and say, oh my goodness, look at everything that's here that I can smell and see and hear and taste. And so in those moments that are really challenging, it helps to kind of equalize and balance our mind and our experience. And in the moments that are euphoric and amazing, we can sort of drink it in even more dynamically, if you will. So on that note, Jody is a good friend, and she took one of my classes almost 2 years ago now. And then after taking the class, had an amazing experience. I don't know if amazing is the word you would use, Jody, but a pretty incredible experience with mindfulness while she was hiking. So Jody, how do you feel about taking like 3 minutes to give us a little rundown of your hiking experience?
I can do that. Tell me if you can hear me okay.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, awesome. So thanks actually for giving me this opportunity. I am so excited to see your face again. We haven't seen each other in a long time, but yeah, I took Anna's class in, I think it was April till June of 2019. And I told her after this experience that I feel like it kind of saved my life when this happened. So I usually would go for little hikes, and I would call them my Fun Friday hikes, and I would always go alone from downtown from my work, and I would either go up to City Creek Canyon or I would go Ensign Peak or one of those. Anyway, one particular Friday, I went for a hike, and it was more kind of like a walk hike, but it's back in City Creek Canyon, and I somehow, I don't know exactly, but somehow I ended up losing my footing on a particular place that the water runs down, and my leg slid all the way down, and I hit a tree with my right ankle, and it hit pretty hard, and I had to go into a mode of mindfulness because I knew it was broken. Well, guessing it was broken. I felt a lot of pain. I was really scared because I was alone. I knew I had about 1.5 miles that I had to hike out. And I just put into my brain all of that training that I learned, and I had to literally just think and just focus on my breathing, and then focus on, I've got this, I can do this. And I somehow got out of the canyon, and then I had these lovely girls that helped me the rest of the way, and went to the emergency room and had a broken ankle. So, or actually kind of a broken lower leg, but anyway, there's my experience.
Thanks, Jody. And Jody reached out to me shortly after that happened with just, this amazing reflection of, wow, mindfulness is not only helpful in, nice, pleasant situations, or helping me with my stress or things. Like I broke my ankle, and the pain and my fear was really overwhelming. And so being able to put this practice to work in that moment kind of, gives you this expanded sort of spacious experience and calms the mind. And there's a lot of physiological, that neuropsychobiological stuff that Steve mentioned at the beginning that we don't have a lot of time to get into, and is obviously totally outside of the scope of what probably everyone is interested in besides me, but it's some really powerful stuff. So this practice of being able to focus on a particular part of the body and to maintain our focus there, with the focus on the word practice, right? That if we do it over and over and over, in pleasant situations, unpleasant situations, neutral situations, walking to the bathroom or whatever, that we start to establish this foundation of skill and ability, that when those moments come, like Jody's, that we have the opportunity to kind of tap into that as a support. So I was going to put this in. Sorry, I have my dog in here with me, and he is now barking. Shh, Squidge. Shh, 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 shh. Hey. Shh, shh, shh. Sorry. I wanted to do another breakout, but I think I'm going to change my mind here, and I think I actually want to keep us all together, and I'm just going to ask for some volunteers, kind of like what Jody just did. We're going to do some sharing for a minute here. Can you guys see my screen still? No. Okay. Let me get it back up. I'm not sure why it disappeared. I don't know that you necessarily need to see it, but I'll just show it to you. This has our little instructions on it. I want to do a couple of things, and so the success of this exercise will be dependent on having some folks who are willing to share a story. So what I'd like to do is have one person volunteer to share a stressful memory in nature. And then after that, I would like someone else to share a really pleasant memory, something that you look back on of this, this time in nature that was just incredible. And we'll have you take about 2 minutes each. And what I'd like everyone to do who is listening is to turn this, like I said, there are opportunities for formal practice and informal practice. This is kind of an informal practice opportunity for us. As you're listening, I'd like you to see if you can pay attention from moment to moment to what's happening in your body and your mind. Like, what emotional response are you having? Do you notice yourself leaning in? Do you notice yourself smiling? Do you notice yourself cringing? Any changes in your breath? And there's going to be so much happening each moment, and a lot of it you won't be aware of, and that's fine. But we're just kind of taking a minute to be in touch with what's going on with us as we have some folks share their stories. So one stressful memory in nature, and then one pleasant. And I'm going to turn my screen sharing off here, and if I think maybe we'll just, I don't know how to do the hand raising thing, so somebody wants to just unmute themselves and volunteer to share a stressful memory in nature. Who would like to do that? Everybody has just blissful memories in nature.
I'm happy to go.
Nina, all right.
Let's see. One time I was walking in woods in Arkansas and decided to go off by myself. I enjoy the practice of getting lost, but this time I really got lost, and just had one of those moments when I was very aware how vulnerable I was. There had only been one other car in the area with me. It was winter time, where if any large cat had been following me, would have been able to see me very carefully. And I'm not a trail runner, but that day I became one, because I realized, oh my goodness, there's no way I'm making it back before dark. And of course I didn't bring a flashlight, and it was cloudy, there was no moonlight. So what was more stressful about the experience was more the anticipation or the thought process of what could go wrong. It wasn't actually a scenario where there was a cat trailing me. It was more the imagination starting to run wild.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love that you bring that up, that there really can be this, there's sort of the actuality of our experience, and then there's what's happening in our mind of sort of the potentiality of our experience, and that those are equally real, right, in the moment. So So I noticed as you were, and everyone, you can kind of reflect on what you noticed, but I noticed through Janina's story, as she was starting to talk about that she, felt sort of out there and maybe was exploring the edges of being lost, like a little more than she wanted to. I started feeling some like pressure in my chest, like just a little bit of like this building pressure, sort of started down my solar plexus and like worked its way up. And then I swallowed hard a couple of times, just randomly. And then as she was talking about being a trail runner, I actually noticed that my knees started like bouncing up and down, like my heels were coming off the ground, like I was doing a little bit of running in my knees, just 3 or 4 times. And then, oh, there's that. So I'm, and I'm not going to say why or what caused what, but I'm just noticing that. And then towards the end, as she was talking about the kind of that this was in my mind and I didn't really have a cat following me. I actually noticed my shoulders drop, like just micro drops, but just this little like, oh, okay, little sense of relief, right? And I'm sure there were a lot of other things that were happening, but in my kind of setting this intention to just pay attention to what's going on in that, 90 seconds maybe that she was talking, all of that happened, right? And that is, that's so much of what's going on all the time, every waking moment. It's a really, really incredible thing. And so that's also in our interaction with nature, that same sort of thing is coming up, right? In these unpleasant moments or moments where we're encountering something like Jody's experience or maybe something a little more minor, that there's a lot going on as we're interacting with our environment, whether it's people or other sorts of things. So thank you so much, Janina, for sharing. Let's do a pleasant memory in nature. I'm going to have somebody unmute themselves and share with us a pleasant memory. You can kind of paint the scene and tell us about your experience of something pleasant.
Can you hear me?
Yes, is that Susie?
It is.
Perfect. Take it away, Susie.
Okay. On one of my adventures, I kayaked from Los Angeles to one of the Catalina Islands that later was bought by the Nature Conservancy. And we were camping out on the island. There were only 2 other people that were basically like caretakers of that area. And so in the morning, we were hiking up on the top part of this island, and UMASS, the native Indians of that area, had made a medicine wheel on top of the hill there. And you could see 360 all around the ocean and towards the mainland. A little wild fox came out of nowhere and walked right up to me, stopped, smelled my feet, looked at me, and then scampered on. And then being in the water, I was swimming, and Grimaldi are these very tiny goldfish in the seaweed forest that they have there. There was no fear. It was amazing. They would just come up to you and look at you because they didn't have that many people contacting them. And they had caves that you could kayak into, and there's this amazing green light that was reflected between the different areas of the cave and the ocean and the sunlight. It was a very special experience. I hadn't experienced the wonderment of wildness of animals without fear. That was really, really very special.
That was amazing.
Yeah, it was for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
What an incredible story, an incredible story. So again, maybe just taking a moment to notice everyone as you were listening. I don't know about you, I'm not going to take you through my entire experience, but the emotional, like this fox, and I felt my breath catch, right? And then this awe and this, and it's physiological stuff, right? That's happening in our body and our emotions. Again, just in this short window of time. And this, again, this opportunity that we have to be more aware of what's happening from moment to moment in the body, in the mind. And then rather than, sometimes when we hear or we experience really pleasant things, we immediately want to just say, oh, I need this to last forever, right? We go on a vacation and we say, well, I should probably, buy a house here, or I should probably just quit my job and stay here forever. Or I always use the example of brownies, because I love brownies so much. And I take one bite of a brownie and then I'm just immediately sad because I know that the brownie is eventually going to come to an end. But this opportunity, right, to instead say, I'm just going to savor this moment, right? I'm going to savor this without feeling like I need to cling on to it, cling on to this comfortable, at ease, or euphoric, or whatever experience that I'm having. But that we can just kind of be present with all of it, right? We can say, wow, look at all of this stuff that happens to me all the time, these ups and downs and these sort of tightening and expansion and contraction and all of this stuff that's happening with my breath and my body and my emotions and my thoughts. And that all by itself is as wonderful and incredible and unique as a sunset, right? Steve was talking about sunsets in our breakout group, and that they're so unique and so incredible. And that we can sense into it. It doesn't just have to be these pleasant things that we seek out all the time, but that we can open up to that every single moment. So along those lines, the last thing that I want to do together is going to require you to have a little prop of some sort. So I'm going to give you, maybe I'll give you like 3 minutes to go and get yourself a prop, and let me tell you what you need. So you're going to need some sort of organic object. So if you have like a house plant, maybe grab your house plant. If you want to pop out the door and grab a leaf or a rock or a scoop of dirt or a branch or just something organic that you are actually going to use as your object of attention and focus for this last mindfulness practice that we're going to do together. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to go and grab something, and it's all the better if you can sort of handle it in your hands. So go ahead and take a minute and do that, and we will start back up at 8. So let's do 8:31. Okay, let's wait for just a couple more moments and then we will get started. Okay. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes to explore the parameters of mindfulness and kind of a noticing practice with nature. And you can do this, there are lots of different ways you can do this, lots of applications. I am hoping that at some point in the future we can have an in-person session and do sort of an expanded version of this. Anyone who's come to my mini retreats, you've experienced something like this, and it tends to be kind of the hit, sort of the favorite of all the different practices. And especially for folks who are really tuned into nature and appreciative of things like that, this practice can be a really powerful one and really beautiful one. So we're going to essentially do mindfulness practice where we're going to work with our senses kind of one at a time. So we'll be introducing them one at a time. And through this practice, there are a couple of what we call attitudinal qualities that you will want to see if you can kind of bring online or invite into your experience here. One of them is called beginner's mind. And what we mean by beginner's mind is we are essentially stepping into each moment with a sense of freshness, of newness, of I've never been in this moment before. I've never had this particular experience before. Maybe I've had some that are similar in the past, but I've never ever actually literally had this one. And so it's kind of like the wonder of a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, right? I have a little girl who's 1.5, and when we go for walks, we get about 3 feet in an hour because she has to pick up every single rock and she has to look at every single crack and every single leaf. And so it's that sort of thing of just this wonderment and curiosity and playfulness and sense of adventure. The second quality is acceptance or letting be. So as we sort of take this stance of just observing, rather than having a sense of, oh, I wish this was a little different, or, oh, that should be different, or, oh, my fingers are getting dirty because this is, I'm holding a scoop of dirt or something like that. I don't like that. We kind of just step back and say, this is what is. This is what's here, and I'm just going to kind of let go into just this moment. It's not saying I'm resigning forever and will no longer have opinions or judgments or navigate my life skillfully, but just for this moment, I'm kind of stepping into a place of whatever is here is what's here, and I'm going to see it and feel it and touch it and sense it fully. So those two things combined are the two attitudinal qualities that I'd like you to kind of wrap this experience in, if you will. So to begin, what I'd like to do, if you have something that you can hold in your hand, I'd love for you to just get your little organic object. I have a little rock here that I'm going to use. And get your little organic object, and I want you to just place it in the palm of your hand, just one hand. We're just going to hold it here for a minute and really sense into the sense of touch. So maybe feeling its weight in your hand. If it's something you can maybe roll over in your hand, and feeling the touch of it with each of your fingers or your thumb or the palm of your hand, maybe closing your hand around it if that's something that makes sense, or placing it between your fingers. Taking a minute here to just kind of play with this sense of touch. Noticing textures. And as we work with this sense of touch, maybe also inviting this sense of sight, of vision. What is there to see? And slowing down that whole process, right? This little rock I have here is the most ordinary rock that you'll ever see. And so I may never, under any other circumstance, really look at it, like really look at it and see it. So taking your little organic object and really for a minute, seeing it and feeling it. For no other reason, just for its own sake. And then inviting for a moment, maybe a sense of smell, So maybe giving it a little bit of a sniff, seeing what there is here to smell. Maybe I'll sniff one end and sniff the other end.
That's petricure.
Petricure, yes.
The scent of a stone, actually after a rain.
Thank you for mentioning that, Jane. I wrote that down after you mentioned that. That's the best word ever. Petricure,
Yes.
the scent of rocks after rain. Wonderful smell. Wonderful smell. But whatever your object is, just taking a minute to kind of notice, right? And when we smell something, we almost immediately say, oh, I like that, or oh, I don't like that, right? And so even just noticing that, just noticing our mind, the quality of our mind to grasp onto things with some preferences, and just smiling at that if you notice that, right? And I'm noticing as I'm rolling this rock around in my hand that the temperature of it is changing and the moisture level on this rock is changing, right? As I am interacting with it, we're sort of having this dance together, that my interaction with it isn't just changing me, it's changing the rock in some sense. And if we were doing this with a piece of food, I would now tell you to put it in your mouth, but that may or may not make sense. If you got something organic that's like produce, then feel free. Or if you got something like a rock and you want to put it on your tongue, then feel free to do that as well. Now I kind of want to. Oh, that's fun. And now I have one part of the rock that's dry and another part that's wet. And it's actually changed the color, and I can see different things now. So just playing around for a minute here with sight and touch and smell and maybe taste. And then if there's any sort of sound quality here, if there's a leaf and there's some crinkling, or maybe tapping the rock against something, or any other kind of sound you can make with your organic object, you can do that now. And then coming back into some stillness, and maybe just holding your object in your hand for a minute here. I'd like you to take a moment and consider the sort of larger context of this object. So if you have a leaf, maybe considering the tree that it came from, the branch, the tree, the roots of the tree, the soil that it grew in, the earth, the other surrounding trees. With my rock, I might be thinking of a riverbed and the other rocks and the water flowing over the rocks and the little fish and insects and plants growing in and around the river. Whatever your organic object is here, just taking a moment to kind of paint this picture of the interconnected environment and surroundings where this lovely little item might have come from. Both in terms of space and in time, just kind of thinking about this expanding context. Where it might have been its journey here to be in your sight and in your hands right now. And taking just a moment here to sense into some gratitude. Almost like an honoring of this little organic object. Where it came from, that it's here with you now. what it represents, a larger ecosystem, interconnected web of life. And you're a part of that, and your little object is a part of that. Just taking a minute here as you breathe, we're not contriving anything, we're just sensing into this incredible interconnectedness, the beauty and intricacy of this little object, and of you and this little object in this much bigger, beautiful thing that we call nature. And here you are sharing this moment together. And taking just a moment to just breathe in that gratitude. A gratitude that might have a little bit of a sense of love or compassion, a sense of connectedness, and perhaps even a sense of stewardship. And that in some way, somehow, you and this little organic object are quite similar. You share a lot in common. You live together. And taking a moment to wrap up with this gratitude and sense of interconnectedness. And this awareness of yourself and each of us and each of our little organic objects as a part of one whole. And even during this time of isolation, this time of maybe unprecedented disconnect in a lot of ways, that we're all still here. We're all still here together in the same place. And to wrap up this practice, I'd like to share a poem with you. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense anymore. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. That's a Great Wagon by Rumi. So that, thank you so much for doing that final practice with me. That's sort of our nature-centric practice, if you will. And I wanted to save just a couple of minutes for, we have a few, housekeeping items, and I wanted to save just a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions, but I wanted to share this last screen with you. So we've got lots of other sorts of things going on at Mindfulness Utah and Swanner, lots of virtual things. So I just wanted to share my email address with you if there's any questions I can answer, or you're interested in other types of practices. I get questions sometimes about what are good mindfulness apps, or where can I go to read more or learn more, or things like that. So I'm always happy to answer those questions. I love my work, and I love talking about my work, and I love doing my work. So if you let me do that more, I'll just love you too. So there's my email address for you. And thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for taking this time, and I don't know, maybe taking this risk of spending 2 hours staring at a screen. Hopefully it was at the least not painful, and at best filling and enriching and nourishing and enlightening maybe. But I really appreciate your participation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And I think Hunter had a couple of housekeeping things she wanted to touch on. If anybody has any questions that you want to throw into the chat box or anything else, you're welcome to do that. We've got just a little over 10 minutes left. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to Hunter.
First of all, thank you, Anna. That was so wonderful. I didn't quite know what to expect, and I loved it. That was great. I definitely plan to use some of those things in my day-to-day life. I just wanted to follow up with everyone and let you know that we'll be sending a follow-up email with a recording of this just to everyone who's registered, in case you missed part of it or you want to go back through some of those practices and have Anna lead you through them again. We'll also be including a survey in that chat, and then I can throw in that email, and I can throw the survey into the chat here as well. One thing before everyone goes, if you could put into the chat how many people were watching with you from your device, that would be awesome. That just helps us to kind of track how many participants we had in person, and that helps for future grant writing and reporting and those kind of things. The survey helps us as well with promotion and tenure processes, with grants, with providing more funding, and with figuring out what other programs we should host. So we would love to hear from you about that. Anna and Steve and I have been discussing potentially a follow-up mindfulness workshop, something maybe a little longer or more in depth, or with more time outside. And so there's some questions about that in the survey as well. If you could fill it out, we'd love to hear what you're interested in. And then that's about it for me. I'll send any resources that Anna shares with me in that follow-up email as well. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We're working on our 2021 programming for Honor, and then I'm sure we'll be doing some more partner events with U Extension Summit County as well. So keep your eyes on our website and our newsletter for that. Steve, do you have anything that you wanted to touch on before we close out?
Well, just want to thank everybody for being here. And thank you so much, Anna. It's so refreshing to hear mindfulness explained so clearly, so effectively, and then to be able to practice it. It's just life-changing. So thank you so much. Thank you, Hunter, for joining together with the three of us really to do this, and it's been a great experience. And thanks everybody for coming tonight, for taking this the risk, as Anna said. I hope this benefits you, and that you'll be able to go and implement these practices in your life, because it'll make a big difference. I promise you that. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thanks, Sid. If anyone has questions, feel free to shout them out now too.